He accidentally wed an alien queen, and his world was never the same. Eli Carter had always considered himself an ordinary man with an extraordinary job. As an interstellar pilot and trader, he had spent most of his adult life moving between planets, transporting goods and sometimes people, with little more than the hum of his ship and the stars to keep him company. He had grown used to unpredictability, to navigating strange laws on distant worlds, but nothing in his experience could have prepared him for what awaited him on Xithra. The planet shimmered under a pale blue sun, its surface dotted with cities that rose like crystals from the ground. Illyrian spaceports were efficient, orderly, and surprisingly welcoming to humans, at least at first glance. Eli's ship, the Star Sparrow, glided to a landing bay designed for medium-sized freighters. He had come to Xithra with one simple goal: deliver rare minerals from the asteroid belt of Quarian to Xithra's capital and pick up a shipment of Xithran textiles to sell on Earth. Simple, quick, and profitable. That was the plan. As he disembarked, Eli's eyes widened at the sight of the city. The streets bustled with creatures of all shapes and sizes, many of them alien to him. Some had wings, some had multiple eyes, and others had elongated limbs that moved with a fluid grace. Yet despite the differences, there was a sense of harmony in their movements, a rhythm Eli could not help but admire. He made his way to the marketplace, following the holographic signs pointing toward the central trading district. Xitharans were known for their strict customs, particularly when it came to relationships, rituals, and ceremonial gifts. Eli was careful. He had studied some of their etiquette before arriving, though he knew that real understanding could only come from experience. "Good morning," Eli said politely to a merchant who had several glowing crystals displayed on a stall. The Xitharan merchant looked at him, three eyes blinking in sequence. "You wish to buy?" the merchant asked, his voice melodic but formal. "Yes," Eli replied, selecting a few crystals he knew would fetch a high price back on Earth. He handed over the proper credits, watching as the merchant examined them with delicate fingers. "Ah, you honor us with proper payment," the merchant said, bowing slightly. "But one gift remains for your special guest." Eli frowned. "Special guest?" he asked. He had no guests. He had not invited anyone. "You will see soon," the merchant said with a knowing smile, presenting a small, glowing object. "A token of union for the one who will unite with you." Eli hesitated, but curiosity got the better of him. He reached out and accepted the object. It felt warm in his hands, pulsing softly like a heartbeat. "Wait," Eli began, but before he could finish, a group of Xitharan attendants appeared, bowing in unison. "Master Eli, you are summoned." "Summoned?" Eli's brow furrowed. He was a trader, not a noble. Why would anyone summon him? The attendants led him through winding streets, past hovering transport vehicles and towering crystalline buildings, until they arrived at a grand palace. Its walls were translucent, revealing gardens inside that glowed with bioluminescent flowers. It was beautiful, almost magical. Eli felt a pang of awe and, truthfully, a little fear. Inside the palace, the throne room stretched high above him, filled with alien symbols that he could not read. At the far end, seated on a raised platform, was Queen Lyra. She was unlike anyone Eli had ever seen. Tall, regal, with eyes that seemed to shimmer like liquid silver, she radiated an aura of command and intelligence. Her presence was magnetic, and Eli felt a strange pull toward her. "You have accepted the token," a voice said. Eli turned to see an elder approaching. "By Xitharan law, this signifies a formal engagement to Her Majesty, Queen Lyra of Xithra." Eli froze. He had no idea what the elder meant. He looked down at the small, glowing object in his hand. "Engagement? I don't understand." "I didn't mean—" "You have been chosen," the elder said gently but firmly. "The union is binding, the queen consents, and the law is clear." Eli's heart raced. He could not believe this. A mistake in the marketplace. just a misunderstanding, had suddenly made him the betrothed of a queen. His mind spun as he tried to think of a way out, any way at all, but the more he looked at Lyra, the more he realized that he was trapped in a situation far beyond his understanding. Lyra's silver eyes met his, and she studied him carefully. "You seem surprised, human," she said, her voice calm yet carrying the weight of command. "Do you know what this means?" I think I do now," Eli stammered. "But I didn't mean this at all. It was an accident." Lyra inclined her head slightly, a gesture that seemed both thoughtful and amused. "Accidents are how many great changes begin," she said. "You will learn in time what it means to be bound to XTRA. For now, you must remain here and participate in the customs." Eli swallowed hard. I don't know if I can." "You will," Lyra said simply. There was no anger in her voice, only certainty. "Or you will learn the consequences." The attendants guided him to a room where he would stay while preparations for the ceremonial engagement took place. Eli's mind was a whirlwind. How could a simple trader end up in this position? His thoughts kept circling back to the marketplace, the glowing token, and the kind, yet insistent, merchant who had unknowingly changed his life forever. As he tried to rest, the enormity of the situation pressed down on him. He was in a palace on an alien world, legally bound to a queen whose power could rival that of entire governments back on Earth. His training as a pilot had prepared him for dangers in space, for rogue asteroids and hostile ships, but it had not prepared him for this. This was uncharted territory, and there was no manual to guide him. The next morning, Eli was introduced to the intricate rituals of XTRA court life. He learned that every gesture, every word, and even the placement of his hands had meaning. Mistakes could cause offense or political turmoil. He stumbled often, feeling clumsy and out of place, yet something unexpected happened. Lyra observed him with quiet interest, occasionally correcting him with patience rather than scorn. She seemed intrigued by his simplicity, by the straightforward way humans approach problems. Unlike the XTRAns, who relied on tradition and ceremony, Eli acted with instinct and reason. When he fixed a minor mechanical problem with a hovering servant device using nothing more than duct tape and ingenuity, Lyra's advisors whispered among themselves, impressed by his resourcefulness. Despite himself, Eli began to feel a strange connection to XTRA and its people. They were curious, disciplined, and proud, but also capable of admiration and loyalty when inspired. He realized that perhaps this accident, this absurd, terrifying accident, might lead to something meaningful. Yet danger lingered. Word of the human engaged to the queen spread quickly, and not all were pleased. A faction of nobles resented a foreigner assuming such a position, and whispers of rebellion began to circulate. Eli had no allies here, no family, no understanding of the political currents that ran beneath the palace's gleaming surface. He was vulnerable, and he knew it. That evening, as the pale blue sun dipped below the crystalline horizon, Eli stood on the balcony of his temporary quarters. Below, the city shimmered like a sea of lights, alien yet beautiful. He felt a mixture of fear and exhilaration. His life had changed forever, and there was no turning back. Somehow, he would have to navigate this world, win the trust of the people, and survive the challenges ahead. And somehow he would have to explain himself to the most powerful alien queen in the galaxy, without losing his life or his dignity. As night fell, Eli stared at the stars above XTRA. Somewhere out there, Earth waited, simple and familiar, yet now distant. He felt a strange pride, a flicker of excitement, and a deep, unshakable curiosity. Whatever this engagement meant, whatever adventures awaited him, he knew one thing: his world and his life were never going to be the same again. And with that thought, Eli Carter braced himself for the impossible. Eli Carter had barely slept the night after his accidental engagement. The palace on XTRA, grand and glowing, seemed to hum with life even at night. Outside his window, the city shimmered like a sea of light, full of creatures moving in ways he had never seen. Some floated, some glided, and some even walked on walls as if gravity had no meaning for them. It was mesmerizing, but it also reminded him that he was a stranger in a world full of rules he didn't yet understand. By morning, attendants arrived promptly to guide him through the day's ceremonies. Eli had learned quickly that Xitharans took every moment seriously. Even eating had its rules. He found himself seated at a table that floated a few inches above the floor, with food arranged in patterns that formed symbols of respect and status. He tried to follow the gestures as best he could, but when he reached for a glowing fruit, he accidentally touched it with the wrong finger. A murmur ran through the room. Eli's heart raced. He had read about the importance of proper dining etiquette in Xitharan culture, but reading about it was nothing compared to experiencing it. He quickly apologized, hoping no one would take offense. To his relief, Lyra gave him a small, approving nod. "You are learning," she said calmly, her silver eyes watching him like a hawk. "Few outsiders do so quickly." Eli swallowed. I'm trying," he said honestly. Lyra's expression softened slightly. "Good, try harder tomorrow." Despite the intensity of the lessons, Eli began to notice something remarkable. The Xitharans, though strict and disciplined, were incredibly curious about humans. They asked him questions about Earth, about human inventions, and about the way people solved problems. Eli realized that his mistakes, while sometimes embarrassing, were also opportunities to demonstrate human creativity. Later that day, Eli was introduced to the palace's training grounds. Xitharans were skilled warriors, and even their nobles underwent daily practice in strategy, combat, and diplomacy. Eli had no intention of fighting, but he was curious. As he watched, he noticed a small problem. The automated defense drones were malfunctioning. They floated erratically, zipping back and forth, threatening to crash into anyone nearby. Eli stepped forward. "Excuse me," he said, approaching the nearest drone. He studied its mechanisms with a careful eye, adjusting a few levers and reprogramming its movement with a simple sequence of commands. Within moments, the drones moved gracefully in formation again, following their intended patterns. A murmur of astonishment rippled through the onlookers. Lyra's advisors exchanged glances, clearly impressed. Lyra herself tilted her head, her eyes studying him with interest. "You are different," she said quietly. "You do not rely on tradition. You rely on reason." Eli shrugged, feeling both proud and nervous. "I just try to fix problems," he said. Lyra smiled faintly. "Sometimes that is all a ruler needs." Eli's confidence grew slightly, but it was still fragile. The palace, for all its beauty, was also a place of politics and subtle power struggles. Not everyone welcomed a human in the queen's circle. A faction of nobles had already begun whispering about his presence. Some called him a foreign fool, while others feared that his unconventional ideas might upset the established order. One afternoon, Eli was summoned to a council meeting. He had no idea what to expect. The room was vast, circular, and lined with floating displays showing the planet's resources, trade routes, and political divisions. The nobles were seated in a semicircle, their expressions unreadable. "You will speak today," one of Lyra's aides said quietly. "Explain your vision for our upcoming trade negotiations with the Korath system." Eli blinked. Trade negotiations. He had only just arrived and now he was expected to contribute. He took a deep breath. I think I can help," he said cautiously. "On Earth, when we trade, we look for efficiency, fairness, and trust. I think similar principles could work here." A few nobles scoffed, whispering to one another, but Eli pressed on. "We should focus on creating partnerships that benefit both sides. Not just wealth, but also knowledge and technology. Sometimes, a simple solution can solve problems that years of negotiation cannot." Lyra's eyes shone with approval. She did not interrupt him, but she did not need to. Her presence alone gave Eli courage. Slowly, some of the nobles nodded, intrigued by the human's perspective. They had never considered approaching trade from such a simple, practical angle. After the meeting, Eli was exhausted but proud. He had survived his first political challenge, and in doing so had earned a small measure of respect. Lyra approached him quietly. "You did well," she said. "You have a mind that is not bound by tradition. That can be both dangerous and powerful." "I just do what I think is right," Eli replied. Lyra's smile was enigmatic. "And that is why you are here." Despite these small victories, Eli could not ignore the dangers that lurked. One evening, as he wandered the palace corridors, he overheard a conversation between two nobles. They spoke in hushed tones, clearly unaware of his presence. "The human, he is dangerous, not in strength but in ideas," one said. "If he gains Lyra's favor completely, the old order will crumble," the other replied. "We must find a way to remove him before it is too late." Eli's heart raced. He had expected challenges, but now he realized that some factions might actively work against him. He could not fight physically like a Xitharan warrior, but he could fight with his mind and his resourcefulness. He spent the next few days learning everything he could about the palace, its defenses, and the routines of the nobles. He observed patterns, memorized schedules, and discovered secret passages that even some courtiers did not know about. Every moment of curiosity became a tool, every small detail a potential advantage. One night, a test came sooner than expected. During a ceremonial ball, a noble attempted to embarrass Eli publicly, challenging him to perform a traditional dance that involved intricate movements and timing. Eli had no idea what to do. The music began, and he fumbled through the steps, nearly colliding with other dancers. The noble laughed, confident that he had humiliated the human, but Eli improvised. He began to mimic the movements in a way that was slightly different but elegant in its own rhythm. The crowd watched, surprised by his creativity. By the end of the performance, applause erupted. Even Lyra clapped, her smile approving. "You adapt quickly," she said afterward. "That is a human strength." Eli realized that his survival depended on thinking differently, acting boldly, and turning mistakes into opportunities. He had begun to understand Xithara's culture, but more importantly, he had begun to understand himself. Humans had a gift, the ability to innovate under pressure, to remain calm and resourceful when others would panic. That gift, he realized, could earn him respect in a world that valued tradition above all else. Yet challenges continued to appear. During a strategy meeting, Eli discovered that the palace drones were not only used for defense, but also for monitoring the movements of the nobles. A malfunctioning drone had revealed a secret plot to undermine Lyra's authority. Using a combination of human ingenuity and careful observation, Eli managed to redirect the drone's attention, exposing the plot without anyone realizing his involvement. The nobles involved were furious but could not deny the results. Eli's presence had changed the balance of power subtly but significantly. He was still a human in a foreign world, but he was no longer helpless. His mistakes were turning into advantages and his curiosity into power. By the end of Part 2, Eli began to see a new purpose. He was more than a trader or a visitor. He was a bridge between worlds. The human's creativity, courage, and resourcefulness were beginning to earn recognition on Xithara, even among the skeptics. Eli's accidental engagement had placed him in a position of danger, yes, but also of influence. And somewhere deep in his mind, he realized that the greatest challenges were still ahead. There were forces outside the palace, threats that no one had anticipated, and situations that would require every bit of human ingenuity he possessed. But for the first time, Eli Carter felt ready to face them, armed not with weapons, but with courage, cleverness, and the determination to survive. and perhaps even thrive. In this strange new world, Eli Carter awoke to the soft hum of the palace early one morning. The blue sun of Zithra had barely risen, casting long, delicate shadows across the crystalline floors. He stretched and rubbed his eyes, remembering the strange, exciting, and terrifying events of the past weeks. He had adapted to palace life better than he expected. He could now navigate the ceremonies without major mistakes, and even the skeptical nobles had begun to treat him with cautious respect. But deep down, Eli knew that palace politics were only part of the challenge. Zithra was not a peaceful planet, and the galaxy beyond its skies was far more dangerous than he had imagined. That day, as Eli walked through the gardens, Lyra appeared beside him. She moved with the grace of someone used to command, yet there was warmth in her presence that comforted him. "Eli," she said, her silver eyes focused on the horizon. "There is news. Scouts have detected a fleet approaching Zithra. They are not here for diplomacy." Eli felt his stomach tighten. "A fleet? How big?" he asked. Lyra pointed toward the distant sky. "Too many to ignore. The Korathians are moving fast. They seek to conquer, and they will not hesitate to destroy anyone who resists." Eli swallowed. He had faced danger before, asteroid belts, space storms, even pirates, but nothing like this. These were organized, advanced warships, far larger and more threatening than anything he had encountered. His mind raced. "Do we have defenses?" he asked. Lyra nodded. "Our warriors are skilled and our drones are numerous, but brute force alone may not be enough. Strategy and adaptability will be key." Eli's heart pounded. Strategy and adaptability, that was where humans had an advantage. Unlike Zitherans, who relied heavily on tradition and strict protocol, humans could improvise. They could think creatively under pressure. And now, he realized, his creativity might save an entire planet. The next hours were a whirlwind. Eli was introduced to the War Council, a group of Zitharan generals and advisors who oversaw the planet's defense. They were polite but clearly skeptical of the human in their midst. "You are inexperienced in war," one general said bluntly. "How can you help us?" Eli swallowed. "I may not be a warrior, but I can look at problems differently," he said. "Sometimes the solution isn't stronger weapons. Sometimes it's unexpected tactics, using the environment and thinking like the enemy." Lyra nodded, silently supporting him. "Let him speak," she said. Eli took a deep breath and began to outline a plan. He suggested using the planet's natural terrain to their advantage, creating decoys and traps and employing drones not just for defense, but to mislead the enemy. At first, the generals were hesitant. The plan seemed unorthodox, risky even, but as Eli explained further, they began to see the logic in his ideas. "You think like a human," one of the advisors said slowly. "Perhaps that is useful." Within hours, preparations began. Eli oversaw drone deployments, set up emergency communication systems, and even trained small teams in improvisational tactics. Every decision relied on his creativity, his quick thinking, and his understanding of human problem-solving. Slowly, he began to earn the trust of the Zitharan warriors. The day of the attack arrived. Dark shapes filled the sky as the Korathian fleet descended. Their ships were sleek, fast, and heavily armed. The people of Zithra looked up with fear and determination, trusting in their queen, and surprisingly, in the human who had so recently become part of their world. Eli and Lyra stood side by side in the palace's central command room, observing the incoming fleet. "Are we ready?" Lyra asked. Eli nodded. "We can't match them in strength, but we can outthink them. Stay close and watch for patterns. I'll need your support to make the fleet trust the wrong targets." As the first Korathian ships approached, Eli activated the drones he had positioned around the planet. They moved in strange, unpredictable patterns, drawing the enemy's attention away from critical cities and resources. Eli watched carefully, adjusting their paths in real time. The Korathians were confused. Their formations faltered, their attacks misaligned. Meanwhile, Eli coordinated ground defenses, using simple, clever traps inspired by human engineering. He had converted old transport tubes into launchers, repurposed communication arrays as distraction signals, and even created small, controlled energy pulses to mislead the enemy sensors. The Korathians, expecting rigid defense strategies, were caught completely off guard. In the midst of the battle, Lyra and her advisors marveled at Eli's calmness. Unlike the Zitherans, who sometimes hesitated to deviate from protocol, he acted quickly and decisively. His human intuition allowed them to adapt faster than the enemy. Hours passed, and the Korathian fleet began to retreat, unable to handle the unpredictable defenses and traps. Zithra had survived, and Eli's ideas had played a key role. The palace erupted with relief and celebration, though Eli remained focused. He knew this was only the first challenge. The galaxy was vast and threats were never far away. After the battle, Lyra approached Eli once more. "You have done something remarkable," she said. "Your courage and creativity have saved many lives today. Zithra owes you more than words can express." Eli felt a mix of pride and disbelief. "I just did what I thought would work," he said humbly. Lyra's smile was soft but full of respect. "That is why humans are special. You think differently, you act boldly, you inspire hope." Eli realized something important at that moment. Humans were not the strongest species in the galaxy. They were not the fastest or the most technologically advanced. But their ability to innovate, to remain calm under pressure, and to act with courage in impossible situations, that was what made them valuable. That was what made them remarkable. In the following days, Eli became more than a human in a palace. He became a symbol. Stories of his role in the defense spread across the city. Even some of the skeptical nobles began to see him in a new light. He was not just a guest or a mistake. He was someone who could contribute meaningfully, someone whose ideas and courage could change the fate of a world. Yet Eli also understood that this was just the beginning. The Korathians would not give up easily. Other threats would come, and the political landscape of the palace remained as treacherous as ever. He had to remain vigilant, clever, and adaptable. As he walked through the palace gardens one evening, he reflected on the journey so far. A simple mistake in a marketplace had led him to this point. Standing beside a queen, helping defend an entire planet, and proving that humanity had qualities worth admiring in a galaxy that often underestimated them. Lyra joined him silently. They walked together observing the glowing gardens. "Do you ever wonder how your world compares to ours?" she asked. Eli thought for a moment. "I think humans have something unique. We're not the strongest or the most perfect. But we can solve problems, adapt to change, and face challenges head-on. Maybe that's why we survive." Lyra nodded thoughtfully. "And perhaps that is why you are here, to remind Zithra and maybe even yourself of what can be achieved with courage and creativity." Eli smiled, feeling a sense of purpose he had never experienced before. His life on Earth had been ordinary, predictable, and safe. But here, on Zithra, he was part of something bigger. He was a human in a galaxy of wonders and dangers, proving that sometimes the smallest differences could make the biggest impact. And as the pale blue sun set, casting shimmering light across the city, Eli Carter realized that his accidental engagement had become the adventure of a lifetime. He had survived palace politics, impressed a queen, and defended an entire world, all because of human ingenuity, courage, and determination. The future was uncertain, and challenges still lay ahead, but Eli felt ready. He had faced impossible odds before and survived. He would face them again, and with humans' unique way of thinking and acting, he was confident that he and Zithra could thrive even in the face of unimaginable threats. That night, Eli stood on the balcony of the palace once more, looking up at the stars. The galaxy stretched endlessly before him, full of mystery and danger, but also full of opportunity. He had learned that being human was not a weakness, it was a strength. And in a world that had never seen a human act in this way, that strength could change everything. Eli Carter had come to Xithera as an accidental guest. He had become a trusted advisor, a defender, and a symbol of hope. And he knew that the greatest adventures were still ahead, waiting just beyond the horizon. Life in the palace had changed for Eli Carter. The initial fear and confusion of his accidental engagement had faded into a complex mixture of responsibility, curiosity, and cautious excitement. Xithera, with its shimmering cities and disciplined society, was no longer just an alien world. It was a place where he had begun to matter. The human's ingenuity, quick thinking, and courage had earned him respect, but Eli was learning that surviving in the palace required more than cleverness. It required understanding people, building trust, and navigating relationships with care. Lyra the Queen had grown more attentive to him in the weeks following the Korathian attack. She did not just observe him, she engaged him, testing his judgment, asking his opinion on matters of strategy, governance, and trade. The more they spoke, the more Eli began to notice the depth of her intelligence and compassion. She was more than a ruler. She was a thinker, a planner, and someone who carried the weight of an entire world with grace. One afternoon, Eli and Lyra walked through the palace gardens, a favorite place for the queen when she wished to think in peace. The gardens were alive with glowing flowers, exotic scents, and creatures that moved gracefully along the crystalline pathways. Eli admired the careful design, which seemed to combine beauty, function, and harmony with nature. "You seem at ease here," Lyra said, her voice calm, yet carrying authority. "I'm getting used to it," Eli replied. "I never imagined I'd be here standing beside a queen, helping defend a planet and, well, living in a palace like this." Lyra smiled faintly. "Few humans would adapt so quickly. You think differently, you act differently, and that difference is valuable." Eli felt a strange warmth at her words. It was one thing to be respected for his ideas. It was another to feel truly seen and appreciated by someone so powerful. "I guess I just try to do what's right," he said quietly. "That is a rare quality," Lyra said, looking out at the horizon. "Many leaders think only of rules or tradition. You think of people. That is what sets you apart." Their conversations continued daily. Eli began to teach Lyra small things about Earth, basic engineering concepts, simple problem-solving techniques, and even ways humans approached negotiation and teamwork. Xitherans were quick learners, but their minds were trained to follow patterns and tradition. Eli's ideas challenged them, encouraged them to think beyond routine, and sometimes even sparked debates among the advisors. It was during one such discussion that a council member expressed skepticism. "Human methods are unpredictable. They may help in small matters, but in governance and diplomacy, tradition ensures stability." Eli leaned forward. "Tradition is important, yes, but sometimes it blinds you. Humans survive by thinking creatively, by finding solutions no one expects. That can be a strength, not a weakness." Lyra watched him with interest. "I agree. Stability is necessary, but adaptability can save lives and prevent disasters." Eli understands this instinctively. Eli felt a sense of pride. He had come to Xithera as a stranger, an outsider, and yet his ideas were being taken seriously. More than that, he realized that humans' unique way of thinking was beginning to influence an entire society. Despite his growing confidence, palace life remained challenging. Not all nobles were pleased with his presence. Some whispered behind his back, plotting to undermine him. Eli had learned to observe quietly, to notice small patterns in behavior, and to act subtly. He discovered hidden passages, secret meeting rooms, and even ways to gather information without being noticed. Humans were not the strongest or the fastest, but their curiosity, patience, and ingenuity could give them an edge in almost any situation. One evening, Eli discovered evidence of a minor conspiracy among a few nobles. They planned to exploit the Korathian attack to question Lyra's leadership and push for changes in the council that could diminish his influence. The nobles were careful, but Eli noticed small inconsistencies, a delay in reports, unexplained absences, whispered messages. Using human intuition and careful observation, he traced the plot to its source without alerting anyone. He brought the matter to Lyra privately. "Some of the nobles are trying to manipulate the council," he explained. "It's minor, but it could grow if ignored." Lyra's eyes narrowed. "I see, and you know who is involved." "Yes," Eli replied. "I think I have enough information to prevent them from causing trouble." Lyra nodded thoughtfully. "Your insight is valuable, Eli. It is another way your human perspective helps XTRA." Over the following weeks, Eli worked quietly to address the potential threat. He redirected attention, adjusted council procedures, and ensured that critical information reached the Queen first. The conspirators remained unaware that their plans had been noticed and neutralized. Eli realized that his role in the palace was evolving. He was no longer just a guest or an accidental fiancé. He was a trusted advisor, a problem solver, and someone whose ideas could influence decisions at the highest level. Amid these challenges, Eli and Lyra began to form an unexpected bond. They shared ideas, laughed at minor missteps, and even discussed Earth customs in quiet moments. Lyra was intrigued by the human way of thinking, and Eli was fascinated by her ability to lead with both strength and empathy. One afternoon, they worked together on a project to improve the city's energy grid. XTRA had abundant energy resources, but distribution was sometimes inefficient. Eli suggested a simple method inspired by Earth's renewable energy systems, and Lyra agreed to test it. Over several days, they monitored results, adjusted strategies, and celebrated small successes together. "You know," Lyra said one evening, "humans have a strange way of seeing solutions where none exist. It is refreshing." Eli smiled. "I think every species has something to teach the other. Humans have ideas, but XTRAns have discipline and focus. Together, maybe we can make things even better." Their partnership grew stronger. Lyra began to trust his judgment implicitly, seeking his advice on matters both small and large. Eli found himself feeling protective of her and the planet, motivated not just by duty, but by a deep respect and admiration. He had come to XTRA by accident, but now he felt that he had a purpose here, one that mattered beyond himself. Meanwhile, the people of XTRA began to notice the subtle changes Eli brought. Engineers experimented with new techniques, soldiers adapted his strategies, and even the younger nobles began to adopt his problem-solving mindset. Human creativity, courage, and adaptability were slowly influencing the culture, proving that outsiders could bring value to a society steeped in tradition. Yet challenges remained. Eli knew that external threats, like the Korathians, were still a concern. Internal politics were delicate, and one wrong step could undo everything he had achieved. He remained vigilant, observing the palace, listening to whispers, and learning as much as he could about XTRA and society. One evening, as Eli walked through the palace gardens alone, he reflected on how much his life had changed. He had arrived as an ordinary trader, accidentally engaged to a queen, and now he was a key figure in the defense, governance, and innovation of an entire planet. The weight of responsibility was enormous, but it was also invigorating. He had never felt so alive, so needed, and so capable. Lyra joined him silently, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Eli," she said softly, "you have done more than I imagined. Not just in defense or counsel, but in showing XTRA a different way to think, a different way to solve problems. You have changed more than our plans, you have changed hearts." Eli felt a warmth in his chest, a mix of pride, gratitude, and something he could not name. I just try to help, he said. You do more than help, Lyra said. You inspire, and that is rare even among queens and rulers. Your presence here has value beyond measure. Eli looked out at the glowing city, feeling a deep sense of connection. He had come to Xithra by accident, but he was no longer a visitor. He was part of this world, a bridge between humans and Xitharans, a symbol of what courage, ingenuity, and adaptability could achieve. As the pale blue sun set, Eli realized that life on Xithra was no longer frightening or confusing. It was full of challenges, yes, but also full of opportunity. He had found a place where he could make a difference, where his human qualities were admired and needed. And he knew that the bond he was forming with Lyra, built on respect, trust, and shared purpose, was something that could endure even the greatest trials. That night, Eli stood on his balcony, looking up at the stars. The galaxy stretched endlessly above, full of unknown worlds and unseen dangers. Yet he no longer felt small or powerless. He had learned that humans were not defined by strength alone, but by creativity, courage, and the willingness to act when others hesitated. Eli Carter had survived palace politics, gained the trust of a queen, and influenced an entire society. And as he gazed at the night sky, he knew that the greatest adventures, the toughest challenges, and the most important lessons were still ahead, because he was human. And humans, he realized, were capable of remarkable things. The morning sun rose pale and blue over Xithra, casting a soft glow across the crystalline city. Eli Carter stood on the palace balcony, watching the streets below. The people were stirring, unaware of the storm that was about to descend upon their world. Despite the calm morning, Eli's mind raced. Intelligence reports had confirmed what he had feared. A second, larger Korathian fleet was approaching. Unlike the first attack, this one was designed to conquer, not merely test defenses. Lyra joined him, her silver eyes calm but focused. "We must prepare," she said. "This attack will not be easy. They are organized, relentless, and determined." Eli nodded. "We can't outgun them, but we can outthink them," he said. "We need to use every advantage we have: terrain, drones, traps, and unpredictability." Lyra's expression softened slightly. "I trust your judgment, Eli. You have proven your value before. Today, your decisions may save Xithra itself." Eli felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. The lives of millions, the safety of a queen he had grown to respect and care for, and the future of a planet all depended on human ingenuity, courage, and leadership. For a moment he closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and reminded himself of everything he had learned: observation, adaptability, quick thinking, and courage. He could do this. Humans could do this. The Korathian fleet appeared on the horizon, a dark shadow against the glowing sky. Their ships moved with precision, forming patterns designed to intimidate and dominate. The people of Xithra watched nervously from the streets, their faith in their queen unshaken but shaken nonetheless. Eli and Lyra gathered their advisors and generals in the central command room to finalize the defense plan. Eli spoke first, outlining a strategy that combined human creativity with Xitharan precision. "We will split our defenses," he explained. "Some drones will act as decoys, drawing enemy fire away from the cities. Others will guide the fleet into zones we have prepared with traps. Ground forces will move strategically, supported by energy pulses that can disable enemy systems temporarily. And most importantly, we must remain unpredictable. Korathians expect patterns. They will not expect improvisation." One general, still skeptical of the human, raised an objection. "This is risky. If even one part fails, our defenses could collapse." Eli met his gaze steadily. "Risk exists in every plan, but creativity and adaptability are our strengths. Follow the plan, trust your instincts, and adjust as needed. We survive not because of strength, but because of cleverness and courage." Lyra's presence reinforced his words. We will follow his plan. His insights have saved us before. Today, they may save us again. The battle began as the first Korathian ships entered Zitharan airspace. Eli directed drones in unpredictable patterns, creating confusion among the enemy fleet. They launched attacks from unexpected directions, while Eli coordinated energy pulses that temporarily disabled several warships. Ground forces moved with precision, using traps and terrain to their advantage. The Korathians were strong, but they were unprepared for a defense that combined intelligence, creativity, and adaptability. As the battle raged, Eli noticed a smaller squadron attempting to flank the palace directly. Without hesitation, he used a combination of human ingenuity and quick thinking. He guided a series of drones to intercept the squadron, creating the illusion of a larger force. Simultaneously, he directed energy pulses to disable their targeting systems. The Korathians were caught off guard and their attack faltered. Lyra watched Eli with admiration. Your human way of thinking, it turns weakness into strength, she said quietly. Eli did not answer immediately. He was too focused, analyzing every movement, anticipating the enemy's next step. Every decision mattered. Every choice could determine the survival of the planet. Hours passed, and slowly the tide of the battle shifted. The Korathians, frustrated by the unexpected tactics and unpredictable movements, began to lose coordination. Their formations broke, their attacks became disorganized, and their morale faltered. Zitharan forces, inspired by the humans' courage and the Queen's leadership, pressed forward with renewed determination. Finally, the Korathian fleet began to retreat. Their ships turned away from the planet, moving back toward the edges of space. Cheers erupted across the city as the people realized that they had survived, once again thanks to the unexpected human who had arrived by accident. Eli felt relief flood through him, but he knew the battle was not just about tactics, it was about the spirit of humanity. After the battle, Lyra approached Eli in the palace gardens. The air was filled with the scent of glowing flowers, the soft hum of energy fields, and the quiet cheers of the citizens below. You have done more than defend our planet, she said. You have shown Zithra that courage, creativity, and ingenuity are as powerful as any weapon. Humanity has earned respect here, and so have you. Eli smiled humbly. I just did what I could. Humans are not the strongest, but we try to solve problems, adapt, and act when it matters. That's what makes us human. Lyra's eyes softened. And that is why you are invaluable, Eli. You remind us that the greatest strength is not always in power or tradition, but in courage, cleverness, and compassion. In the days following the battle, Zithra began to recover. Eli worked closely with Lyra to repair damage, improve defense systems, and strengthen alliances with neighboring planets. He taught Zitharan engineers techniques inspired by human problem-solving, showing them ways to make systems more efficient and adaptable. Soldiers learned to combine their discipline with flexible tactics, and young nobles began to adopt human-style reasoning alongside their traditional training. Eli realized that his accidental engagement had evolved into something far greater than he could have imagined. He had arrived as a simple trader, confused and frightened, but he had become a bridge between worlds, showing that humans could offer wisdom, courage, and ingenuity to societies that had never considered such qualities. Yet Eli's journey was not only about influencing a planet. It was also about his personal growth. He had come to respect Lyra deeply, not just as a queen, but as a person. She was intelligent, compassionate, and brave, willing to take risks for the sake of her people. And through their shared experiences, Eli had discovered something profound. Humans and Zitharans, despite their differences, could learn from each other, complement each other, and even form bonds that transcended culture and species. One evening, as they watched the twin moons rise over the city, Lyra spoke quietly. Eli, you have changed Zithra in ways few outsiders could. And you have changed me too. Your courage, your perspective, your humanity, they have reminded me that strength comes in many forms. Eli felt a warmth in his chest, a mix of pride and humility. I didn't mean to change anything, he said. I just acted the way I knew how. Lyra smiled, reaching out to place a hand gently on his arm. Sometimes that is enough. Sometimes a single person's actions, guided by courage and ingenuity, can change the fate of a world. The palace buzzed with life around them, citizens celebrating their survival, engineers working late into the night, and drones moving gracefully across the skies. Eli felt a sense of belonging he had never known. He had come to Zithra by accident, but he had found purpose, respect, and connection. He was no longer just a human visiting a distant planet. He was part of its story, a contributor to its survival, and a symbol of hope. Weeks later, Eli stood before a gathering of Zitherans, addressing them alongside Lyra. The citizens listened intently as Eli spoke about cooperation, adaptability, and the value of courage and creativity. He spoke of human ingenuity, of lessons learned from mistakes, and of the importance of acting boldly when the stakes were high. The audience responded with admiration, applause, and renewed faith in their leadership. You have proven that humanity can inspire change, even on distant worlds, Lyra said, her voice strong and proud. And you have reminded us all that courage, ingenuity, and determination are qualities to admire and emulate. Eli smiled, humbled and grateful. I only hope that humans and Zitherans can continue to learn from each other, to face challenges together, and to build a future stronger than any of us could imagine alone. The crowd erupted in cheers, and Eli felt a profound sense of fulfillment. He had survived impossible odds, navigated palace intrigue, defended a planet from conquest, and forged bonds that transcended culture and species. He had arrived on Zithra by accident, but he had become a part of its heart and future. That night, as Eli and Lyra looked out over the city from the palace balcony, the twin moons casting silver light over the streets, he realized that humanity had not only survived, it had thrived. Humans had shown courage, creativity, and adaptability that could change the course of history, even on a distant alien world. Eli Carter had come to Zithra by mistake. He had faced fear, challenges, and danger. But through ingenuity, bravery, and determination, he had turned accident into purpose, chaos into triumph, and misunderstanding into respect. And in doing so, he had proven what he had always believed, that humans, though ordinary in many ways, were capable of extraordinary things. As the stars sparkled above the planet, Eli knew that life would continue to bring challenges, adventures, and discoveries. But he also knew this. Humanity, in all its resourcefulness, courage, and heart, could meet those challenges head-on, and perhaps even change the galaxy along the way. And for the first time, Eli felt certain that he was exactly where he was meant to be.